Hey, Kurt.
Are you, Dr. Brad?
Ready to go again. Very
Okay.
exciting work.
Today, yesterday we had 3 videos today, and yesterday we started with the introduction, and we're trying to say, in continuing our project of how do you tell the story, since that's the hard part. How do you make something overwhelming into a narrative the user can grasp? Moreover, how do you create the plot that the reader wants to follow through the book, right?
Right.
The model I use is Guns, Germs, and Steel, where Jared Diamond starts out as, I'm walking through the bushes and I meet this tribesman named Yali, and he's a honcho among the natives, and he asks the question of, why do you white people have so much cargo and we brown people do not? So essentially he's created the plot, right? The Sherlock Holmes plot for the book. And I really appreciate that. Stuck with me as one of the best plot mechanisms for a nonfiction book that I've come across. It's always stuck with me, and I've said, God, so I have my own notes in here. Just like, how do we state Yali's question? Yesterday when we were talking, you said start with the story, and it's like starting a Sherlock Holmes novel, right? I mean, you find the murdered victim in the library with the candlestick, and right? That's what Yali's question is. It's setting up the riddle in the first sentence or paragraph that frames from there on the narrative, and so the user isn't waiting. Is this worth me doing? Right? You want to get the first sentence. It was a dark and stormy night. Okay, that's really the number of bad ways to start a fiction story is just. But the thing about nonfiction is people expect that the user will read it, right?
Okay.
Right. And so the thing is, it's one thing to expect the user to read something that they have a chance of understanding.
I know, I understand that wry laughter. That makes sense to me, because it's like, okay, this is gonna mess your head up.
So I said, so I just wanted to go over that. So I'll pick up this book, and I have a quote from Ortega y Gasset. Europeans do not know how to live unless they are engaged in some great enterprise. When this is lacking, they grow petty and feeble, and their souls disintegrate. We have fortune to live in interesting times, and in these interesting times, we must, even if reluctantly, refresh our souls, people, and civilization, and engage in the next great enterprise. This work explains that next great enterprise.
That's very good.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to say is I want to create the promise, the solution to the crisis of our age. That's a paragraph, right? It's just a few sentences. I don't know how to said that, but that's what I think it has to be.
That's right.
Right. From there, you said tell the story. I think at that point, I've put the bait on the hook,
right?
And it's a meaningful, it's a meaningful bait, right? Or record, yeah, record. So the question gets into the story. Now, yesterday you said just start at the beginning.
That's my.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I did say that. And it's a suggestion, right?
Well, I know, but it was an insight, and so the problem is, I want to that I am like usual too close to this thing, and so my tendency, which I can see when I go through each of these sections, is to over inform, and it
Oh.
ends up being repetitious.
Oh. Okay.
So I originally started out with, it's a solution to the crisis of our age. What is this book about? A reformation.
Yes.
Then I explained how transfer informational eras come about. And then I had the Western narrative, right, which is the evolution of the West. And then I asked Yali's question and said, what went wrong? And then how we're going to fix it, and that this is our next great endeavor, right? And then the promise, in other words, this is going to be worth your time, but it's really hard, and all those prevarications, right? All right, so that's what I intended to do. That's that seems like a lot of promise before you get from it's the body, we found the body in the library with the candle, what's the problem, to cutting to Mr. Whatever is gone through, so in other words, cutting from that scene to some historical involvement, in other words, to some engaging the reader. Okay. So what I heard from you yesterday, what resonated, sorry, I lost my voice yesterday. What resonated was that we would go and I would go into the historical narrative, the cycle of history, the Europeans, right? The evolution.
Yeah.
Because
it starts with at the edge of civilization, right? The civilizations already exist, and they're just running around chasing pigs, as Michael Jones would say, in the woods. And then what happened? How did this evolve into where we are now, right?
Yeah, and the way I've currently got it structured, because in the first draft I started out with why were Europeans successful, right? And it was quite a long introduction to Europeans. And I felt that, yeah, great, but I haven't created a context to explain that yet. So then I went and I said, okay, well, let's move all this stuff about comparative civilization to the explanation of the individual group strategies. In other words, I took the explanation for Europeans and I put it closer to the end, or more in the midpoint. So after the first principles, we get up into, we go through part 3, which is group strategy. Okay. Part 2 ends with the summary of part 2, which is, the institutions, right? The nation, the state, the government, the bureaucracy, civilizations, etc. Right. And then part 3 starts with group strategy: human evolution, human variation, geography, competitors, military strategy, economic strategy, group ethics, right? The life cycles and summary of group strategy. But then I go into group strategies and I start with European. And that's where I put that in there. Or I put that story in there. So I didn't get into a narrative until I built the whole science. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you're telling me.
Right. And once we've got that, now we've got this full set of foundations from first principle of the universe all the way to group strategies to individual civilizational group strategies. And I've got them all there. I've got European, right, Japanese, Chinese, Indian, Muslim, Jewish, Gypsy, African, right? I mean, I've got the whole, I can add more, right? But they're the ones that matter. I suppose after African, I could put Austronesian, but I mean, there's just not enough to say there that's different from African. And then part 4, I go into the law, which is where I start with logic, the grammars, epistemology, truth, falsehood, and deceit, applying the law, governed by the law, strategy under the law, application of the law. Another application is where I said we should probably cut that off and put that in a separate book, because you're talking about a million paragraphs, right, that go into a lot of different things. And then and so I had moved the story from the front because I just felt like I was justifying the story. In other words, if I describe the cycles of history as a problem, right, and that we're just in another cycle of history, and then I get to the end and I'm like, I've built up this huge scientific edifice comparing civilizations. I'm not making an excuse for the West, because when I read it, I kept coming up, this sounds like I'm painting this heroic picture of these European. I mean, it just felt wrong to me. I mean, it's just,
All right.
it felt,
That's important. It has to feel right for you because you're right.
it felt I wasn't handling the problem it felt disingenuous to me to state it and then justify it. Rather, if I built up and then I compared them, it's just an evolutionary outcome by accident of these things.
Okay.
So that's why I moved it to later. And I didn't want to repeat it later, right? When I have to go over comparative civilizations. Jesus, I really lost my voice, haven't I? See, that happened from yesterday.
Tiny bit froggy, not too bad. Coffee should help you. But you're still left with the problem then. Okay, how do we entrain the reader from the beginning, right?
How do we get a reader, and specifically a reader, that's got a couple years, maybe the first year of college or, whatever, but I don't want it to require, you or me in order to fucking read the thing. You know what I mean? The story has to be, the beginning of the story has to be enticing enough to do the work.
So it's like you gotta leave a cliffhanger. Is how I would see it. Your introduction has to. We are in the midst of a big problem here, right? And it requires a lot of. The solution is going to require some hefty brain work, right? Yes. And it's like, and I think if you started it like that and talk about the problems that we face collectively as humanity, we face a terrible set of problems, and it has to do with the exhaustion of the opportunities on planet Earth for the humans. And they say it again.
Say that last bit again.
The problem that we collectively face as humanity is the exhaustion of life opportunities for life on planet Earth. That is what everyone is focusing. Their attention is focused on this with the climate change and the exhaustion of fossil fuels and the too many people, not enough resources, right? Too much pollution, damage to the ecosystems, right? It's like, so that's what they're thinking of. And it's like, what it requires is an understanding. We have to cooperate in a way that we've never cooperated before in order to solve this. And in order to do that, we must properly understand human nature and process that into our thinking in order to solve these problems collectively. We have to change the way we think, or the way we know, and the ways we cooperate. We have to understand this in order to accomplish the objective collectively. So the challenge is dropped, that you drop the gauntlet in front of them, that They need to be able to understand human nature to solve the problems they seek to solve. And this science offers that opportunity.
Exhaustion of the opportunities for human
Existence on this planet, right?
So the solution.
We have to radically rethink the way we think about everything, which is real is truly the mountain that lies underneath that first paragraph
Mhm.
is just, it's daunting. But you've laid the bait out that it's
Yeah,
the
I think
answer.
that's bait. I think that's the bait. Hold on. This isn't the first. This isn't our first radio.
Right?
Audio.
That's right. This is
Yeah.
not, it's a, we've had problems like this before, and we have our our consciousness is adjusted, our patterns of knowing, our understanding has evolved in a manner that has allowed us to take advantage of new opportunities, right?
Yeah, so that's this isn't a novel problem.
Yeah, it has happened before.
All right. And this book provides a reformation. Yeah. Okay, I think I can do that because that's simple. It's an incremental promise.
I regard this work as like it's a modification of the way we understand knowledge, how we speak and think about everything will change because of this process of learning this.
I still end up with it being a little. It really ends up being a college. Well, it depends on the college. I'm not
That was
sure.
rude. That was pretty rude. I want to, I appreciated how rude that was. That was good.
It's like, it's like, well, I mean,
Look at those guys that are entering college. They're, it's like they're at the frontier, and they need to be outfitted to get ready to go in the world, is where they're at, right? The college kids. And so they're being outfitted and they know it.
I would like it if I was targeting a freshman in, yeah, in a college. I suppose. I mean, who's not going to understand? Let's pick a, because people roughly sort by IQ into disciplines, right?
Okay.
So, is a person who goes to school to study education going to understand this? And those are dumb
That was
fucks.
rude too. I was gonna
mean-
say, I was gonna add icing to that and say, do you care?
Well, I'm just trying to pick from the bottom. I go down to social workers.
They're nice
I-
people. I understand you. You have to kind of understand it that there's a heat soak is what they talk about in mechanics, which is it's the heat will get in there, but it doesn't just instantly do it, right?
A heat sink, yeah.
So it's like the heat heats up the proximal portion before it sinks into the sink, the soaks in. So it's like the target audience is the early adapters is who you're aimed at, the earlier adapters. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I guess the what's rolled around in my head is as long as the first part, like this introduction, reasonably accomplishes its goal,
Yeah.
then I would like it if a freshman in college, even if not in a STEM, in other words,
Right.
would understand that the concept exists.
Oh, there you go. That's good.
Right? Because if they understand that and they understand the Constitution, that's fine. Right? They don't have to understand more than those two things. The rest of it, that's like saying, well, I need to understand the Bill of Rights basically in order to be a citizen, right?
Okay.
I mean, if the Bill of Rights were complete, all you'd need to understand was the Bill of Rights in order to be a citizen, right? If you follow the 10 Commandments, it's just about enough, right? You know what I mean? The Bill of Rights is a similar.
Right.
Golden Rule, 10 Commandments, Bill of Rights, Charter of Human Rights. And if you can go back and look it up, if it comes a question, that's fine. But that's what a citizen needs to have, right? A person who wants to debate needs to understand the basic concept. A lawyer's got to be able to apply that concept. And a judge needs to master that set of concepts. And hopefully in doing so, somewhere between citizen, lawyer, and judge, we produce some set of politicians that can be regulated by a judge to keep legislation within those bounds, right? I mean, but it's not like, I mean, I'm trying to write this simply as I can, but it's not like, I mean, I'm trying to write it for a college kid, right? I mean, college freshman. But, it's like, that's okay. I'm still talking about really complicated shit. Right. And so if I pull up Thomas Sowell, who I think of as a great communicator of for economics, right?
Yeah.
And then I go to Hayek. It's a jump to go from Sowell to Hayek.
Yeah.
Right. It's a jump to go from Sowell to Hayek to the econometrics, right? But it's not hard to go from actually it's hard to go from you go from Sowell to Hayek to Becker to econometrics, right? You start running up that sort of strange scheme. You might stick Krugman or one of the other general books in there. Probably after, yeah, you'd stick in. I don't want to compliment Krugman, but his book is
I know I was like this.
oh, it's actually pretty good. So is what's his name? So guy at Harvard, not coming to me. I mean, I've read all the economic textbooks, right? They're actually not bad. All the top 10. I mean, they're not bad. It's that they're incomplete, right? They don't practice full accounting. And so you don't understand that, well, this just lets people get away with shit, Right. But if you've got like, you get the general idea of Sowell, you get the general idea of Becker, Hayek, the general textbooks, and then econometrics, right, which is up to the math. I mean, you can go that whole thing, but the average person doesn't need to know anything deeper than Sowell. And the primary concept in Hazlitt, there's only one concept, which is accounting for the seen and unseen, which we call full accounting, right? We just elaborate on full accounting so that it's a testable measure.
Right.
So I'm looking at this like, well, the average person just needs to know that the fundamental difference between human thought is that humans don't do full accounting unless we're trained to do
We
full
will
accounting
absolutely avoid it
at all costs.
And it's, I think this is essential is that perhaps in the introduction to describe the problem that we're facing today as there's a faulty nature of all the sciences to fail to make a possible full accounting. And it's like, this is the remedy to this problem. We must fully account for.
Well, that's in what went wrong, right? That's what went wrong. Okay, so you want me to go there?
It seems like that, because the fact is that let's back up 10 steps and look at the thing from the other side of the room. You created a methodology for understanding and accounting for that which has not been accounted for, which has caused a great deal of problems and will continue to cause a great deal of problems of grave proportion, right? And so if they walk away after having learned that little bit, that there is a way to think and integrate the sciences that makes possible full accounting, then you have done the job of the introduction to the book. Does that sound right?
Yep, I'm trying to put capture here.
I like that as a goal, which is to,
And I think I can take all of this other crap out if I just do that. Yeah, I can take all of this other crap out. I gotta leave one thing in, and that's the blame. I gotta deal with the blame issue. And that goes down into what we covered yesterday, which is the unpleasantries, the trigger warning. We're not to blame for fucking accidents of history. Blame, the problem of blame. I'll put that in 3. Okay. Wait a minute. So let me just go over this. So in every great transformation, I really love that section. So what I'm missing here is I messed up the oops, which is in the 1830s. Right, I missed the oops.
you know, you're not sharing your screen, right?
Yeah, because I don't want to make you nauseous or the audience, because
That's okay.
so I missed the fact that, you know, I'm like, where did we go wrong? Well, you know, we went through all these reforms, but when we hit the 1830s, Babbage discovered computing, right?
Okay.
But by the failure discovered computing. I shouldn't put it that way. Babbage didn't. It's almost funny in retrospect. Maxwell's working with Maxwell and others, right? Faraday, all these. They're working with electromagnetism, right? Which gives us the radio, and then all of a sudden everything. But the fact that this is like the magnetism is like a bridge between the physical and the magical.
Yes.
Right. So that that bridge was made you think about high abstractions, right? It made you think about thinking of a new way of thinking.
Okay.
Right. So it made magic into science. And now we had to think about a thing that we can't touch or see or smell, right? In the abstract.
Right.
The problem with Babbage is he did computing by gears, which is, of course, the oldest way of doing it, which we see the end to get the mechanism, right? So he's doing it with gears. And it doesn't come clear to him that it's just he's making a calculator. But he didn't generalize the theory because it was still too concrete. Right? He didn't bridge this gap between, it's not magical enough. It's just work. Like complexity. It's not magic. So it didn't require you to sort of switch your brain around. You know, and then you go through Maxwell and Faraday and all those fucking guys. You get up to Einstein, he's like, I don't fucking get that. Don't make any goddamn sense. This can't work this way. Right? It's like, and so he comes up with his goofy relativism thing, which is unfortunately philosophical and mathematical, but not physical. The great thing about Faraday and Darwin and Maxwell and all those guys is they still treat it as a physical, not analogical process, right? They still tried to create a physical narrative, a classical narrative, and they described the classical narrative in math. The problem with Bohr and Einstein is like, well, just do the math. Well, that doesn't solve the problem of you've provided a description but not a theory, right? In other words, the theory isn't classical, so it's not a theory. In other words, there's no operational means of solving the problem here. It's just gravity's magic, right? I mean, it's just right. With the space, well, no, space doesn't bend. Stuff bends as it goes through space, right? But why, right? So, but he just made that problem go away with math, right? He just didn't solve the problem. So, so he half solved the problem and created a crisis in physics that we aren't past yet. So
It's like this. It's like there's a mythological function there that it was near enough for the moment,
right.
and now evidently it wasn't close enough, so we're left wanting more precision.
Right.
And so that's where
Well,
but
it functions as a source of ignorance, because since we've trained everybody to think in math instead of thinking operations, right? And so that's the problem. Whereas that's the problem with computing too, is that had he solved the problem, Babbage, he had abstracted it like Maxwell and Faraday had abstracted it. In other words, turned it into a science, right? We would have had the concept available going forward. But since we didn't have those concepts, we were vulnerable to other pseudosciences that did the same thing that Einstein and Bohr and, Freud just made shit up, right? Marx just made shit up. I mean, people just made shit up because it was justifying what they wanted.
of course, that's what
right?
people will do, but given an opportunity, right? And it's so it is the issue is the opportunity is to exhaustion. We're that opportunity set that existed at the end of the industrialization, that began at the end of the as the industrial age was taking off at the 20th century, we're to exhaustion of that opportunity. And so that's the crisis that we're in right now. And it's like it requires a higher degree of precision of thinking to solve the problem, right?
That's what it is. Create. Thank you. I knew we just worked at it. We would get there.
It's just hammer.
You said it yesterday because I just listened to it in the video this morning. You said it yesterday, but I didn't have a context for it. And now I have the context for it. To create a way of thinking.
And it truly is a bizarre thing, man. It's a transformation of our thinking from an analog format to a this digital format. How ridiculous sounding is that?
So say that again. What?
It's the transformation of thought processing from an analog to a digital form.
Well, that's hysterical.
Isn't that about what it is?
Well, it's creating, it's going from from a qualitative to a cardinal, or an analogy to a measurement. Yeah.
Like I say, it sounded ridiculous when I said it, but that's the key difference. It's impressionism to photography, right?
Yeah, it's just like, but you can understand, right? Like, we're socially overwhelmed right now because they've undermined our institutions. Or flip it around, we're overwhelmed right now because our institution, Christianity, couldn't adapt fast enough.
That's correct.
For the needs. Well, I mean, what's happened then is that nothing's adapted fast enough for our needs. What's happened is our productivity has produced a means of providing such relative prosperity, that the failure of our other institutions is masked.
That's where we're distracted.
Yeah, we're by it. So wealth decreases pressure to compromise, right? And poverty increases pressure to compromise, or relative poverty increases pressure to compromise. So when you have to compromise, you need higher demand for institutions.
Cooperation, right?
Right. When there's wealth, there's lower demand for compromise, obviously, because we get what
I
we
just
want,
do what I get what I want. I don't need
no
to
matter what.
negotiate, right?
So the weird one that's rolling around in my head right now is something a friend said in a video the other day. Is like he's going through all the things that are wrong, and I'm like, well, the real wrong, the what's wrong in economy, socially, whatever, is we're not producing enough children to mandate the need for behavior that's primarily directed to the production of generations, children into adults, whatever. So this is a sort of, I mean, we're having uncontrolled growth, cancer of hyperconsumption, of conspicuous consumption. And so we don't have children, basically society is children. Right?
No, grow up.
They're the
everybody.
first principle, right? Because that's what's going on. And so by decreasing the rate of children, we've increased the rate of hyperconsumption, lowered demand for responsibility. Well, this becomes an anti-virtuous cycle. And so if you want to bring it down to one problem, that's the one problem. The one problem is that we're not generating enough children to produce demand for all the subsequent behaviors that our psychological, social, economic, and political needs depend upon. I mean, you can't have an advanced economy if you're decreasing in population. Right? You can't, you just can't, you especially can't have one if your middle class and upper middle aren't reproducing. Because the smart fraction is the only one that provides marginal advantage. The average people don't provide advantage. It's like Christianity. I can say no. It was I got a lot of fans, Christian fans, yesterday for something I said, and I said, well, the thing about Christianity is you can be virtuous. You don't have to be rich or powerful.
Right.
Right. You don't have to be smart or rich or powerful. You just have to be. It's fundamentally you have to. Being good is the art of not being bad.
Right.
Right. I mean, and so, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't have your smart fraction. That, right.
Doesn't move you forward, right?
It doesn't move you forward. So poor, smart people are going to be good, nice, poor people, but they're not going to get out of the hole. Right. You have to have enough people above 140 to make a marginal difference, because that's where it starts. Well, it starts in the mid 120s, but you start being not an idiot at 115 or 120, right? You start being capable at 125, and I'm sorry, everybody else is just living on memetics, right? It's horrifying. They're bots, right? And that's the great thing about institutions like Christianity. You become a pretty good bot. I mean, it's the best kind of bot you can be, really. It's like the do no harm bot. What?
Hanging out with Kurt, man. It's all right, man. It's like that's where it is. That's where it is.
But I mean, it's like, okay, what is the first cause of our conceptual problem? It's the one I said. What's the first cause of our socioeconomic political problem? It's the demand for children have become too expensive, right?
They have
And we've
become too
allowed.
devalued. The
Is that true?
population appears to prefer to consume rather than to produce children.
Yeah, but which is again a policy problem, right? I mean, it's just we've made that possible. If you look at any policy that removes responsibility is bad. Any policy that provides a vehicle for you to obtain responsibility is good. Because your responsibility is participation in cooperation, computation, calculation. You just, there is no. It's like I was explaining to some an Asian person the other day who's I'm a fan of mine, and This person said to me, well, what about, the way we look at the world? I'm like, the problem with harmony is it's basically stasis. And anybody that's looking at circular time, infinite time, or a search for stasis or a search for harmony, they're basically saying, Red Queen, kick my ass.
Right? You're a
Right. And
sitting
so,
duck.
right. So the problem is turning competition into a virtue. Isn't that amazing how counterintuitive that is? But you're taking a thing which in group might be seen as a negative, which is, because you don't want, what you want to do is you want to create cooperation, but competition that needs to be limited. You want to turn competition and the production of commons into a benefit, like
Right.
competition as a hunter. But so your whole trick is, how do I get people to overcome all these goofy natural biases, right? Which are all based on the presumption that the world is relatively a fixed pie, or what we call static, when it's not. The only thing you can do is keep running. Now, that doesn't mean we got to keep a fucking treadmill like we have, but we do have to keep moving. We can't sit still. And there's plenty of people who want to sit still.
Yes.
And
I tell you, the majority would prefer not to. They want to well sit.
okay, so the deal with the majority want to well sit is, don't get in the way of people who don't.
But the issue is that there's the well will become exhausted.
The well will become exhausted if redistribution at any point disincentivizes responsibility and competition. Clearly that happens. Or that's the mechanical part, right? That's the top part. Or the people who are well sitting believe that they are due more than they're getting for well sitting.
It's like that. Ever ask any teacher if teachers get paid enough. They say all teachers deny it, but the fact is that they must be getting paid enough. Otherwise they'd be doing something else.
I mean, you get the problem is that the time they have to spend personal time, lesson planning, and grading. They do, right? That's
Right.
just what happens. But they also get all those fucking holidays and the summer's off. Now, we probably shouldn't have kids get out of school for the summer anymore. But and they get an incredible pension. It's unearned as far as I can tell. And they tend to be they work against the interests of the people and the polity.
Apparently.
So, I mean, it's pretty hard to justify that. So, I mean, if you just made it so that it was sort of like the Greeks, it was a moral obligation for people who'd been successful in life to take on civic responsibilities. So, like, guys like us would teach. I mean, imagine if they got you or me to teach history.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, but they don't. They get fucking, the people from the bottom 16% of the class is who teaches.
They industrialized it.
Well,
So,
and they tried to.
they industrialized the training of minds, right?
Which is not good. Which is commoditized, is what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't work. And any kid will tell you it matters if the teacher invests in me or not, but the teacher has to be able to invest in you because he or she has to be able to comprehend you. So what they do, of course, is they just lower the standard until they don't have to force you to adapt by understanding you and helping you adapt. That isn't true of all teachers, but I mean, it's true of a lot of teachers.
It's a max out disclaimer, right?
Well, I mean, I think my sister's wrong, but I mean, she does the right, I mean, she's wrong because she believes in this, every child, right, needs to be treated equally crap, right? But,
That's interesting.
but,
That's
uh,
interesting.
or
As a
every child has
premise.
an equal right. Like your kid can't have, your spazzy, dysfunctional, violent kid can't have a right to sit in my classroom and distract me from my work. Can't happen. Can't exist. There's no right to impose a cost. So, but the problem is that moms all feel guilty because they're working and they've lost the art of motherhood, and they believe a lot of nonsense, and so they force teachers to not tell them bad news about their shitty little brat that's undisciplined at home, and being foisted on a teacher to produce some sort of discipline without what's
Without
necessary,
without the means to do so.
without the means to do so.
Wow.
Whereas, the Asians do, I mean, everybody but us does it pretty good. But I mean, it's just stand in line, it just you ritualize behavior to the point where the child is relying on repetition, not impulse. It's just really fucking simple. And if kids are disruptive, you take them out of the environment where they're disruptive. And if that means that they're tagged as fucking challenging,
They are
they
challenging.
will. They're
In fact, they
challenged.
are. They simply are.
Yeah, and you bred poorly too, by the way. You chose the bad mate. You're a bad mother. He's a bad father, and you've
Oh
created a
my.
bad environment. And so, don't blame me for your kid being fucked up. You did it, and I will. I get paid to unfuck your fuck up, right? But you can't do that if you're teaching your kid woke shit. In other words, if the teacher has no legitimacy because they're teaching propaganda, the teacher's lost the authority to correct the parent. So I mean, we've ruined the system entirely.
I really reject the use of the word "we" there. That really hurt.
Who's we? Oh,
So I really, really, really don't want to be responsible for that.
never let women be in charge.
Oh my.
They produce a race to the bottom, always and everywhere. And I hate saying that because I love women, but it's fucking true. That's my sacred cow. I don't want that.
I understand you. I find you to be humorous in that you claim it's your sacred cow, but you have apparently slaughtered it anyway.
Oh, I did. I just hate it, right? I mean, I wish more people would do that. This is my sacred cow. I slaughtered it anyway. I still keep hope alive, baby, but it doesn't provide me with any delusions, right? In my personal life, I'm still going to treat women as if they're awesome, right?
Right.
As my civic duty to my fellow citizens, women are a fucking disaster
Oh my.
politically.
They're
They're
just,
wonderful
I think
socially.
it would be better you just say they're a mess. It's just a mess.
They're just a mess. All right, so um, I think wow, my ass is fried. So I think I know how to write this, and I think I know where the content already is. So it's more of a copy paste edit
Right.
function for most of this, because I've already written that other side. I've already written the problem of the 1830s. I mean, it's in detail in the book on libertarianism that I didn't publish because I don't want to be associated with libertarians.
Interesting function there. Right. Some
Write a book only
dissociative
to realize
function.
you don't want to be associated with.
Yeah.
Rothbardians, I should say, because it ends up being basically a criticism of. All right, so okay, and so now we finished this introduction, right? And now we roll over into the um, the program. So what is this thing? We said, what question, we did this yesterday. What question to our answer? What do we need? And how are we going to go about it? What's the program? Now, someplace in here, I have to do what I have it next, right? The next two topics after the program. So introduction, the program. You want me to share my screen?
Okay.
So we have nonsense, right? We have the introduction, the program,
Right.
and right in here we have a problem, right? Is that we're trying to get to, we have to create a foundation for people who don't understand what science and logic mean, right? And so that's what I wanted to do after this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we discuss what does a first principle mean? And we go over the first principle. Right. Now, what I had done here is to summarize the first principles, because earlier on, we thought we would have to do that. I'm not sure that matters anymore.
Okay.
Right. I'm not sure I'm right.
I understand that too.
Right. So the first principle of the universe, and this ends up being evolutionary computation.
Right.
Right. And then we get to the method, which is continuous recursive disambiguation. And so I don't think we need this here. So I just need to have our mission now. So I want to create I need to create the tools that people have. In other words, here's the problem. Here's what we're going to tell you. Here are the basic tools you need to understand what we're going to tell you. Right? And then, then I'm going to describe what happens here, which is the laws of nature. Right? So we're going to go through the first principles using the method, right? And the first principle. We're going to build up everything from first principles. That takes us through the whole thing. Right? It takes us all the way to the summary of first principles. And then we move into group strategies. So what I want to know is, does that seem like a good way to expose them? The introduction to the problem, the program consists of these parts. This is the basic understanding of what you need in order to understand that. Not here we go with our first principles, and we work through the first principles. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It's truly a bizarre undertaking, however, I must say, because it is. It's like, we're going to reform the way you think about your thinking.
Yeah.
It's like,
one of the things we might consider is, so where do we actually say that? Where do we say that?
We talked about it yesterday. I just read that. The basic need for human verbal animals right there, where you put the little smiley face, is that's it right there. Because the issue is that the way we think about everything is incorrectly formatted and not precise enough in order to solve the problems we have collectively.
Right. And so
we are going to improve the precision of your thinking through this process that you are now engaged in.
So here, right here, 2.7.
Okay.
We're answering that question because I need to tie it together. I want to say what the leap is. And they've got to be able to understand it. But I give them the tools to understand it before they can understand it. In other words, I need to educate them enough so they can understand what's the difference between analogies and measurements,
Right.
right? I mean,
It's like, it sounds so basic, but it's like, it's really all it is.
right. You don't realize you think in analogies. Analogies are precise enough for the past, but they're not precise enough for the present or the future for that matter. And
Certainly not
so,
for the future.
right. So we're thinking you from analogies that are verbal and imaginary to measurements that are physical and real and testable and unambiguous.
But and
Fully
you're making that link to the way the thinking is of that nature. It is, it's concretization of the thinking process.
I don't have it open. Well, I'll copy it over from what we're doing here. All right. So that's what
It's
I
a
do.
materialization of the thinking process is what it is. That's a better way to say it. But you're taking the thought from an abstract analogy to material functionality, operationality.
Yeah, right. So, but we've got to, it's like the minute we start with the triangle, we start to be able to get pictures, right? I mean, we just need to, we need to give them, okay, this is the dip, all that stuff we told you, it's so you can understand this one thing, right? Is that until you've got first principles, you've got analogies that are ambiguous. Once you've got a logic of principles, you've got descriptions that are unambiguous. And the way
It's
you,
like blueprints. It's like
right,
blueprints.
exactly. And so you have, our goal is to explain to you that the purpose of science, right, and is to produce that logic which is descriptive and unambiguous and therefore universal. And that's the logic we're giving.
I just I wonder, and I'm not being naive to the subject matter at hand, is I wonder if that is sufficiently descriptive to the untrained mind.
Well, that's why I say we've got to give them enough. We've got to give them enough basic training up here so they can comprehend what we're going to tell them. Because you can't, it's like you can't wait till the end for them to get it. They'll never finish the journey, right? It's like, like you got to spray some accelerator in the carburetor for this engine to fire, right?
That's right. Okay, ether, actually, that's pretty good, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you ruined it.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I guess. So, because that's the fundamental problem, right? It's like we have to find some way of breaking this story into something that the person can follow rather than just become overwhelmed, because that's what happens to everybody we try it on, right? I mean, unless you reach into their context and help them with a problem and do that repeatedly, which is too costly. We need a way to do it the other way, which is say, here's a way to sort of get there. But the people don't have the tools to disambiguate the world enough to understand the problems. So in other words, they have to have basic foundations in what is, you use this word science, what the fuck does that mean? Right? I mean, kidding. You use this word logic, but I'll guarantee you don't know what that means.
I know it. The most the statement that was made of late with relation to this recent viral problem in the world is trust the science. It's like, trust the science. It's like, that is the most god-awful statement I have ever heard. It's a faith-based statement.
I would say trust the market results over time of accumulated evidence, right? It doesn't mean trust the scientists, which is what they're saying,
Right.
right? Trust the scientists' prediction. No, we trust the accumulated evidence of survival in the market competition with reality. We don't trust the predictions of scientists. Matter of fact, the evidence is they're really bad at predictions.
Really not good at it.
Right. That's why there's so few discoveries, right, that are meaningful, is because they're terrible at predictions. And then we look at all the predictions the inventions that have really mattered. An awful lot of them are fucking accidents. You know.
Yeah. Hey, wow, that was weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't discover this on purpose either.
It was an accident.
It's a fucking accident. I just want to solve a goddamn problem, and I'm autistically stubborn.
You did solve the problem. The problem happened to be something that you did not anticipate.
Exactly.
Like teasing a yarn out, right?
I'm sitting in my naivety thinking, I need to create a value neutral vocabulary and logic of ethics and politics so that we can have honest, listen to my stupid libertarianism, honest political conversations without sounding like idiots, right? That's my naive goal, right?
Wow.
End of the fucking rat hole. And what do I end up with?
Legendary.
Fuck.
Just an accident. Oops.
It's the same thing. We talk about predictions. I get a lot of predictions right. And you touched on something really smart you said yesterday. What I do is I create a field of predictions at the beginning, and I manage the field.
That's right.
I don't say this one's right because that just forces you to justify it. I said, here's a field.
Right.
Given my knowledge, this is more probable than the rest. But as knowledge increases, that probability might change.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And so what happens though is people anchor themselves, right, on some solution.
On an actual prediction, right?
Right. They anchor themselves on a specific prediction, rather than on a field of predictions. And then you know what politicians do? They avoid any prediction because they'll be called out on it. My favorite one of it in this is really popular now, unfortunately, is there's the known knowns, the known unknowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns, right? The four quadrants.
Right.
But that's what he's saying is we just, you don't try to make everybody feel comfortable that you're in control, right? And that you are omniscient. And that you're all powerful, omnipotent, and you're powerful. You say these are the field of opportunities we see, and we're going to pursue anything that advances any one of those because any one of those cheaply, right? Because that's what we all humans do. We advance a field of opportunities, and then we make an excuse that we were right all along.
Right.
Right. That's how memory works. Of course, we make an excuse that we're right along because we only remember those things that created patterns. So then you get the problem of, well, then somebody asks like a soldier, one of the military guys, something, and he's like, I'm not going to fucking tell you that. Well, how do we know? I'm like, you don't know. I'm not going to fucking tell you because you can't keep your mouth shut. Right. And that's the honest answer. Right. So I don't know. Anyway, so we've got to be able to do this in a way that gets that's the right answer. It's the freshman or sophomore in college, right? To understand that there is a problem, what the problem is, and that there's a solution to it, right?
That's right. That is essentially enough information in the head of the freshman.
That's it. Now they could jump to the end of the book now, and say, here are the economic policies. That's right. Okay. They don't even need to know.
That's unnecessary, right?
The rest of the stuff is a proof.
So that's what
I'm trying to get, if we can accomplish that, I consider that
I would
victory.
call that, I would maybe name the part one, the proof, right? The laws of nature. You know what I mean? It's the proof. Because that's what it is. It's the show your work portion of the test, right?
Proofs, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, because you've established that the theory is the first principle of evolutionary computation.
Right. And then you have the
My
proof.
screen is still shared, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we've, this is really where we get to the answer, right there.
Mhm.
Shit, I didn't mean to do that. Um, uh, it's like, here's the problem. Here's how we have to approach solving it. Here's the tools you need in order to comprehend it. Here's the underlying theory that unifies it. And here's how we're going to use that theory to solve this problem. And as a result, you'll learn this basic change in thought. Right? Right?
That's right. Right. And then
right.
What follows immediately after that is the proof.
Right. And so now we're going to, well, is this the proof or is this the research? Well, no, it's the proof of the theory.
That's right.
Right. So we're just doing it.
And it's like,
really what we're doing is
see,
we're writing a bunch of proofs. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. We're writing a series of proofs. Okay, I'll agree with that.
So
each one of these is a proof of construction from first principles. Right? That's what they are. Each one is a proof of construction from first principles.
That's right.
Right.
So it's the proofs.
Right. And then
that's crazy, Bill, because it's like you can skip ahead if you have great faith. You can read the proofs if you don't, right?
Right. And the thing about the proofs, the way we're constructing them, is we're constructing them. If I can find one. I mean, we're making these little, bulleted lists, right? Or series, right? They're simply a system of measurement, right? A system of measurement. They don't even have to read the crap we put underneath it to explain it, right? I mean, that's all you need. It's just a bunch of proofs of construction from first principles. The first principle.
Right.
Okay, and then now we got how we got to get into the law, which is how we argue it. In other words, given these first principles, how do we organize people? And that's the logic, language, logic, grammars, negotiation, epistemology, truth and meaning, falsehood and deceit. Right. Then we get
the way I've been conceptualizing it is it's social engineering. It's intelligent social engineering, architecture, social architecture.
Yeah, but see, the problem is I want to, how do we emphasize, how do we say that it's via negativa architecture? Because that's the problem, right?
It is the problem. And it's like, you can't really talk about the negative things.
Yeah, it's like it's like, it's like
social millwork. It's social millwork, right?
You ever see the guys who take like, I think this is kind of evil, but it's still a good analogy, who take like this big gallon of aluminum, they pour it into an anthill.
Yeah, yeah.
And they dig it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's more like we're doing. Man will evolve if you let him, this way. And we're showing the architecture of how man will evolve. The problem is if you don't do it this way, that's all the dead ones. Right? That's the ones that die.
So that's the big problem for us in this circumstances. How do you make that understood that it's the distinction between statuary by via negativa sculpture versus clay work.
Yes.
right? And so I think that you have to just explain that in the beginning of it, that this is architecture via negativa.
Okay. Well, we have that. If I pull this stuff over from the slides, we have it.
Mhm.
All right.
But it's like because it's like it's a it's a truly it's a bizarre function, which is that it's counterintuitive, right?
Right, because they think social engineering should tell people what to do. It's not. It's like the same thing with the problem with urban development. You don't. What you do is you lay out streets and trolleys and power, and then and maybe some zoning, and you say, and probably some design limitations if you want to make it aesthetically beautiful, and you like develop your neighborhoods, because you can't do it better than via negativa. You can only prohibit the bad, right?
Right.
If you tried to design the good, every single one of these urban development projects fails.
So did you put this in the, is this in the very beginning there? Let's go back up there.
Which topic?
The program. It's in there. The first principle.
You got an insight and I don't see it.
Are you in the first principle? Let's see what you have written there. 2.4. Okay.
This is how physics develops. In other words, this is physics, right?
Now you're in the proof, it looks like.
Well, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to give people the tools.
Oh.
All right. So this is just a way of I'm going to do, yeah, this is the tools. I've got to get the tool of the first principle there. I think what when we get into first principles, I shouldn't have done that. This is what we're talking about, is all these first principles, right?
Yes, I'm looking at this, the introduction part 2.4, where you were, it's just in the introduction set. This looks to me like that is a long form. My impression was this is the organizing principle, or the universal organizing principle, is what I'm interested in having discussed there. I did not recognize you were going to go into great detail on physics.
Well, I was going to put that here.
I see. So this is the organizing principle of the universe is it eliminates things that are unstable, right?
Right, but I've got to give them I've got to build it. Realize this isn't in final form. This is just what we've got.
Yes.
So far. So, I mean, how I thought of it was, let's disambiguate science and logic. All right. Let's talk about what we have to produce as a science. Let's discover the first principle, right, which is this thing here, and let's describe it as evolutionary computation.
Right.
Right.
So this is when you see when I see part 1, the laws of nature there, I was of the impression that was going to be that would expound upon physics and chemistry, et cetera, et cetera.
Which one?
Under the laws of nature, under part 1, item number 3.
Yeah, well, I guess I could do that. I could, let's just discuss the possibility. I didn't want to make the promise without the science to back it up, the claim, without the science to back it up. So I thought I would
prefer to see it like this, is that
here's the theory and then here's the proof.
Yes, the proofs are, and then you link the segments of the theoretical elements in the introduction
to the subsequent.
Yes, you just say it's reference, item.
All right, I absolutely agree.
Because I want that intro thing to be
I got
fairly
it. I'm
more
with you.
concise. Yep,
I'm totally bought in,
thank you.
totally bought in. Totally bought in. So then I just say, we're going to explain this. But all I've got to really do is explain this, right? I mean,
I know, it's stupidly simple.
it's stupidly simple. And then I'm going to explain
The work is in the proofs,
the
right?
work's all in the proofs. And so that makes it really simple,
I like it simple.
right? And so each of these is incrementally simple. And then we
Right.
move
All the proofs are in the proofs.
all the proofs are in the proofs. So I ahead of life, I put physics,
Yes.
right? And I move that down there. And then,
Then that cleans up the introduction into it's just a exposition of the findings.
here are the tools that you need to understand what we're going to do.
Right, and the proofs are shown, right, in the proofs. And it's like this, it's like, honestly, that might be a way to organize it, which is the proofs are their own book, because that is a science book. Does that make sense?
No, that's
Wow.
because it's not going to be that bad, really.
Okay.
Put it this way, let's not get there until, let's make the whole argument so that a college student can pick up a book, even if the book is 400 pages, right? And that book says, okay, this is it, right? I would agree of taking the applied law out.
Okay,
I might even agree with taking the law out, right? But let's get the thing together and then decide if we need to break it into volumes.
okay. No, yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that. Because I see the proofs as being, they're a reference tool that,
Yes,
and this introduction is, here's the findings. This is your findings, right?
yeah,
That's the introduction. And then it's with those findings, the application of those findings to human problems,
yes,
right? And so the proofs are in the proofs, and it's like the interjection of the proofs in the middle show your work. It's like, okay, I'm good. I've registered my thought process.
no, I just think the problem is every time we work on this, we make it shorter. So
Okay.
I don't know how long this is going to be. The Constitution's 80 to 100 pages, somewhere in there, complete. We don't have to put this in there. We don't have to put that in there. All this other crap, we can just leave it at, if the natural thing is the method, the science, and the law. Right,
Right.
that's the natural breaking of it, or it might be the science, the logic, and the law when there's language. But I always put the language in with law. Anyway, I really like that. That makes me happy.
Good. That's a high value. I have a high value on that. Kurt Happy's good.
Now, this thing ends up being the posters, right?
From the proofs.
Well, this summary, right?
Hmm,
This
hmm.
this summary ends up being
Yeah.
the content for the posters,
Yes.
right? This ends up being the content for the posters. I mean, maybe it's not a poster, maybe it's a book, right? Its own book.
A short one, right?
Yeah. It's like, if I remember correctly, it's 25,000 words. What's that?
Huh.
The introduction is currently 16 pages. That's about right.
Wait.
And
That's the introduction.
well, that's that it's got all that stuff in there. I haven't counted it out. It's got
Right.
10 or 12 pages. That's like,
That's not bad.
so
It's very doable.
this one is, oops,
Boy.
God damn it. Goodness. Busting, shaming, moralizing. God, that one's made it around the internet.
What's that?
GSSRM.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's like 70 pages. So at the end, it's going to be. Yeah, 80 pages. I don't know. Like you said, if it comes into volumes, whatever, there's enough here to make it. Where was I using this? This is a great example. I was going through how different art authors start their books. All right. All right, that's what I got to work on.
It is like, so this work is like this. If I was going to make a title for your book, all right, we call it The Great Disillusionment. Because that's what it is. It's like, I'm sorry, sweet dreamer, you've been operating under illusionary control here, and it's time to dispel all these fogs and nonsense and wake up to the real world. But it's Plato's cave, right? It's Plato's cave. It's
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that, at the end of your journey, we're not only completing the scientific method, but we're completing the unification of the sciences into a single logic, right? There's one logic behind all the sciences. So that includes the physical, behavioral, evolutionary, and the formal with which we describe them. So if you created that underlying logic, that logic isn't going to change. It might get refined. There'll be more added to it, but it's not going to change. It can't.
right. It can only be refined, right?
It can only be refined. So
or increased in precision, right?
Yeah, and so because this underlying rule of continuous recursive disambiguation and stable relations of capture energy, I mean, it's just, you can't. That's what the universe runs by. There's nothing else. Right?
It won't change.
It's not going to change, and is as I think, what's his name? What's his name? Little Jewish guy with the funny hair that writes Wolfram. I hope he never sees that. I mean, I love the guy, so it should. He probably would laugh too. Wolfram is that it doesn't look like a universe that could be different could evolve, right?
That's interesting.
All that would differ is some, I don't think any of universe that would be any different could evolve, and it would, if it did, it would be the same principle at different frequencies, which would, it wouldn't make any fucking difference. I mean, I guess the thing is, could you make a universe where the equivalent of carbon? You can't, because you can't even do that. I mean, you're stuck. There's no alternative, because I mean, that's the problem. Carbon's a hexagon, right? Right. There's a reason your brain stores shit as hexagons, because it's the only way you can store binary information out of triangles. I mean, it's just the decision criteria out of triangles. There's just no other way to fucking do the universe. So the resulting logic would have to be the same, because there's nowhere to store information for it to be otherwise. Now, it might be that what we consider the elements would be slightly varied in what we consider the underlying, electron volts or
Substance.
whatever.
Yeah.
but the resulting methods by which atoms can organize is going to end up being something like this, right? So I don't think the universe can organize by, I mean, it's just, I think the world is a lot simpler than we thought, because it just
No,
can't
it's
be
because you
another
didn't want to
way.
believe that it is deterministic.
Right. I mean,
You know, you
you
wanted
want to
to believe
believe
in
there's
the,
more mystery to it than not, right?
you want to
We
believe
got to
in the
fund all those PhD programs.
It is, it's just the simplest. It's a simplification. It's like, okay, it's nice, man. It's but it's the free will thing. I think that's where the illusion of free will is
It's
what.
not an illusion. It's just that the scale of free will is at human scale. In other words, it doesn't mean that you don't have, because you say, well, in another world, would I be here? Of course, you have no idea, because randomness really does exist at the subatomic level, right? So
Right.
even it doesn't, the fact that we would end up with something like physics, chemistry, and biology and genetics, that doesn't mean anything. We would end up with that. But I mean, the evolution is fucking chaotic as hell,
Yes.
right? And so do you have free will? Well, you have the free will question is basically, are you responsible for your actions? Yes, because you have the choice of actions at human scale,
Yes.
right? And so that's the free will question. It doesn't say, do you have the free will to, if to possess infinite knowledge? I mean, that's a stupid question. The
Right.
original question is merely moral. Free will to do what? Free will to act within the bounds available to human action, of course, right? Are you able to make a
Ah,
decision about your actions? Well, of course you are, right?
so
Can we
this, so
therefore
this
hold
is
you
this,
accountable for your actions? Of course
this
we
is it.
can.
So this is where I go with this social engineering function. It's waveguide. The law is a waveguide for human behavior.
What's a waveguide? A waveguide. It's a
It,
waveguide.
it, I don't have a good definition in my head.
Waveguide. Oh, it's just a way of guiding. Wait, okay, that's okay. I'm like, is he meaning something other than the boring stuff I know in engineering?
No, it's simple
No,
boring. It's simple
no, it
boring.
was really what you were saying.
It's just a waveguide, right?
I expected
like
something. Okay,
because you're disallowing certain conformations, certain wave patterns, filtering them out, right? Dissonant waves are eliminated from the process.
correct. I mean, we can come up with an infinite number of analogies, but we
Yes.
end up with the same thing: is that the first principle of the universe is pretty simple. Our language follows the first principle. Everything we do follows the first. I mean, it's really trivially simple. The problem is that while the universe has a fixed number of way of doing things, we can invent more ways of lying than the universe can think of doing things truthfully and reciprocally, because the number of dimensions we can include in lies is higher than the number of dimensions that are actionable in the universe.
Right, and right, and then the issue is social justification. It's the justification of the lies, which is really the offensive bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's just
Well,
interesting.
it's all negotiation, right?
Okay.
Right. So
Right.
everything.
Are you going to accept my justification or not?
Exactly. Right. That's it. And it's like, okay, well, that's, what do we do all the time? Yeah, it's kind of bullshit, but it doesn't hurt me. So go ahead. Right. I mean, bullshit is often a nice way of asking nicely.
That's right.
Right. It's like, or if I say, my favorite ones are the ones that unwanted compliment.
Okay.
Is like, you're a good person, so you'll do that. Or
well, I call it a conditional compliment.
Man, it's like, okay, I would have done it anyway without, right? I mean, But some people maybe that you like brownies, so therefore you can make the brownies for the church festival, right? I mean,
Oh,
that was a good one, right?
yeah.
So or Kurt, you know how to fix computers. You can fix this for us, can't you? I mean, or Dr. Brad, or doctor, you
Oh
know how to
my.
solve, you know. So I mean,
It's easy for you, man.
oh yeah, I love it when people ask me to do their homework. Kurt, I have this thing on law. Will you know, yeah.
Oh
I'll do it
my.
for you.
This
My
is
sister did that for me.
the good redneck problem, which is why my
Yes.
business associate moved away from Ohio, because his family would be too near and get him to do all the things that he's competent at for free.
Anyway, so I don't know. I feel like we know our story.
Yeah. So the simplification of the introduction is a key function, I think, but it's fairly concise.
Yeah, I think it's just I'm all too wiped out now to do anything much.
That's all right.
But it's just a matter of do a little
So we're making progress.
reconstructive surgery.
What's that?
But I gotta do a little reconstructive surgery, so to speak.
Oh my.
I probably need to set up another monitor to do it easily. But I wonder if I can put another monitor on this system. Can I? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so. I only have one port like that, don't I? Or do I have a second one? No, I have two. I can put another port on this one.
Okay.
I have 3 monitors and I can put that over, and then the problem is to write a good paragraph, you think about the paragraph.
Right.
Write a good sentence. Most paragraphs don't matter, but the first paragraph in every section,
Yes.
there's a lot. And some guys, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Pinker, but he writes really good paragraphs. No, he does. He writes good sentences.
Right.
And some people have taught enough, right? They've spoken to
Oh yes,
students
it's a
enough
verbalization practice.
that they've developed the pattern of speaking to, people who are there to learn, and they're maybe not that sophisticated,
Right.
and maybe they don't even want to be in that class that's required.
Right. What a challenge to engage the minds of those people. You know what I mean? It's got to be horrendously challenging.
I mean, what I notice that I don't do that they do, because it comes off disingenuous in my world, or in other words, is in the business world, is they develop the voice. So if you listen to Eric Weinstein,
Right.
he's got the voice. My favorite one is, I can't imitate him, Scottish, Niall Ferguson. Well, if you take it, and it's like he's an actor who's rehearsed his lines.
Right.
When he delivers them, they're so flawless, right? And then you have somebody I really admire also who can do it, is Michio Kaku, who manages to talk in that kind of voice, and no matter what he's talking about or who he's talking to, and so the problem with the professorial or public intellectual method of presentation,
yes,
versus the CEO presentation, is if you do that in my business, it's pretentious and conniving, right? You have to hit it there.
Right. Speak for a straight human, not
it has to be
public persona like.
Right. And so I've done enough acting that I understand the problem, right? To be or not to be, that is the question.
Right.
I've done enough acting to know the problem, but it still feels disingenuous to me.
Yes.
to do it. And so I haven't gotten to the point where if I was teaching regularly in the first year, I would pick it up too, but I don't have that. So the thing that you get out of these really good teachers is that when we say it used to be rhetoric, right?
Right.
It included the voice, the projection, the facial expression, the hand motions, right? The body motions, right? They used to teach that in grade school, or in grade school, I think it was grade school or high school. So I don't have those skills of being it. And when I teach a class, like which I do teach classes, I'm generally teaching like the grad school people, and it's the same. It's discursive. It isn't a lecture. So I haven't picked up that habit, which I kind of admire. Ferguson cooks. I listen to him, and I just love him. He reads his own books, you know. He's fucking awesome. Peterson's interesting because he actually that's the voice I can think of it, you know, in my head. It's much closer to how I would present, right? You know, he's telling a story, and he's just telling it at a pace, and he's using some inflection. And the thing about him is he projects really hard, so he loses his voice in class all the time, which I think is kind of funny. But I just envy some of these public speakers.
Oh yeah.
So they're just amazing.
You know, it's because it's a remarkable skill.
And you know, what do you do? I mean, if you're a stage actor, it's like any politician should take acting. Just take 2 years, take 2 years of acting, and you'll become self-aware. Right? You become self-aware. I took speech. They offered giving speeches, a public speech in college, and it was a great class. But I don't have a problem as long as I can't see your eyes, right? So I just don't wear my glasses if I'm talking to a big audience, because I start talking to the individual. So I just take off my glasses. I could talk to a big fucking audience, and it's fucking humorous for me. But you know, it's my social anxiety kicks in if I can see eyes.
Oh, is that how it is?
Yeah.
That's funny right there.
It's fucking hysterical. All the little games you play.
Just to
You have other people like who was I thinking about the other day? Who's that crazy fucking Malkovich, right?
Yeah.
He's actually a fairly interesting and intelligent guy. And he always plays these crazy fuckers with really goofy facial expressions. And he's not actually like that in real life. He's actually professional, and he's quite he's quite sharp.
Yeah.
Was kinds of guys. The other one who's a female that's quite sharp that always surprises me. Her name is Sandra Bullock.
Oh.
And her taste in men versus her look, I just don't get that. I don't know. Some of I don't get. I wrote an interesting, just as an aside, I wrote an interesting response to a woman who was complaining about all the attention male method actor got. And it's a really good example. It's a great example of analyzing why that's true. Is a great example of sex differences. Because it's men are naturally pretty stoic,
right,
and women are not. So if women get dramatic, we don't see it as work, right? Whereas if
they're just doing,
they're just being women.
that's really rude.
For a guy to go from stoic to some exaggerated and believable work is kind of funny, right? And then the women are depressed that this woman is arguing that men get all this attention for her. Like, well, first of all, let me tell you the second reason. Do you know what percentage of method actors develop mental health problems? Most.
Really?
Right. And so it's not a good thing for women to try either. Because you're already closer to the limit.
You're pushing the envelope already, baby.
Oh, I mean, most of them will tell you that. It's too hard. Right. And that's why it's only good for, I mean, I'm not really a fan of it. The original theory was that a new actor could learn how to draw on past experiences and use them. Right. But when it got to America and we had cinema versus stage, it became a way of really monopolizing the eye of the camera, right?
Right.
With it really intense emotional expression, because you're somewhat limited on the stage, right? I mean, you're
That's
80
right.
feet away. So it's one of the reasons I prefer stage acting. So so they get in there and you're like, well, it worked like crazy, but they took it all the way to the fucking nth limit here. I can't remember the guy's name, but I think if the actor studio is still there, I mean, it's still run by, it's still a living organization.
Right.
And so it's like the high point. Yeah, it's the high point. It's also incredibly detrimental to you. Unless you're incredibly stable and you have an incredibly stable life outside of it. Right. Look what Marlon Brando, I'm a fucking psychopath, right? I mean, a lot of these guys are fucking nuts, right? Right.
What an interesting premise. It's like, yeah, it is. It's like, because it is, it's like, it's it's employment of highly emotional charged aspects of your history in your present. So you're refreshing it. You're like hitting a refresh button on that traumatic function.
Right. I mean, it's why I think most, you allude to the no. It's like you find a woman who's an actress, you run away as fast as you can, is they're fucking crazy. Well, because what is their job? Is to find an exaggerated emotion.
Oh, and then
right?
and then project it into
and then project it. Right. And so it's one of the reasons we tend to like British actors. They don't do it. They act. Right. And so, but it gives them an air of being more stable. They are. So, I mean, so not all, I mean, obviously Christian Bale is one, and what's his name?
I just find it an interesting line of conversation, to be honest.
It's just fascinating because it demonstrates our perceived difference between men and women. Remember that when we go to the thing, we take the actor's emotional experience as a gift to us, a cost he's born to deliver to us. We interpret it calorically, right? I mean, it's meaningful. It reaches out and touches us.
Huh.
So when somebody does that, we feel the investment, right? And it works. It does work. I mean, that's why we react positively to it. But if some woman just goes off, we're like, well, she's just another woman going off. So you look at
it's what it falls into
so
our
fucking
expectation.
The truth is so insulting that it's like it's one of those subjects that I don't want to talk about in public because I know I'll get crucified for it. Because it's true. They're just a woman. And so they wonder why they don't get this thing for method acting, because you're just acting like a woman, right? And then you get, right? But if you think about what's going on in the person's head, if you try to do that, try to take a personality and become that personality constantly for 5 months.
Wow.
And then try to go back to being you.
Be regular again.
You don't.
You can't.
Why do you think, what's his name? Daniel Day-Lewis makes shoes. I mean, he makes men's shoes. He's a, what do you call it? Cobbler. That's what he does to be real, is he's a cobbler, right?
Wow.
So, right. And some, any of them that don't go crazy, like Christian Bale hasn't gone crazy, but he's stable as fuck in the first place, right? He's a stoic guy in the first place. Yeah. So he goes back to being him, but he'll lose it. He'll lose it in character on set because he's so in the character. Right. Huh. So yeah, it makes you fucking crazy. Well, women are crazy anyway. We don't know. I'm just sorry. I just thought it was a great example of sex differences, not only in behavior, but sex difference in interpretation of emotional expression. I mean, if a guy's emotive, you crossed a fucking line somewhere. If a woman's emotive, it could be, fucking raining. I don't know. She could be on the somewhere. Who knows? She didn't like somebody else's toenail color. I don't know. Right? Or I said something that brought up a memory of 35 years ago that I have no recollection of or whatever, and she's going to revisit and gnarl over for the next 4 hours. Right? They're women. They're fucking nuts anyway. So when you see that, you don't see it as a gift, right? You don't see it as this incredible work. on the part of the craftsman. Whereas you take some fucking guy who's, British stoic, and you make him show this pain, and really believe. I mean, Heath Ledger doing the Joker is terrifying, right? But I mean, that will make you crazy. It made him crazy, right? It'll make you crazy.
I just go like that, man. It's good.
I don't know. I just think I just thought it was a great example of
yes,
women saying, "Why can't I be in charge of the financial money like the guys at the big firms are?" It's because you can't fucking do it. That's why. Let's dumb it down. Why can't women have a voice in politics? Because you obviously can't fucking do it. I mean, some of you can, but too few of you can to compensate for all of those who make the wrong decision every fucking time because you're momming instead of daddying. You mean, did I step on enough?
No, it's just this. It's one of these. The interesting function of it, and your work talks about this in a way, which is that to properly diversify the markets, right? Which is there's a market for this, and this is not the market for that.
This is not the market for it.
That's all. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, yeah, it's an inappropriate application of decision-making processes, right? That's not how we do this.
It's not that the decision-making process has no value. It has no value here in this context, right? I mean, it just has no value. Momming is the worst possible thing to do at the political level. Momming is the best thing to do at the family level. And it's pretty good at the interpersonal level. And, social groups put together by moms that produce momming at scale for the disadvantaged is good too.
Yes.
But, politics is daddy work. And it's because politics is a substitute for violence.
That's it.
It's a means by which we non-violently produce ends that would otherwise require violence.
So it's a negotiation to avoid violence. That's the market for cooperation over violence.
Yeah, Clausewitz was wrong. It's not that that war is an extension of politics. Politics is a substitute for war.
That's pretty close, though. It was so close.
Europeans get everything wrong. You can't count it, really. If they can get it wrong, they will.
I'm still holding a grudge against the Europeans, man.
What?
I have a grudge against the Europeans.
Now you should.
Because it's like you guys blew it so bad.
What's that line? You bunch of slack John faggots. What's that line from? It's from the guy with the cig. Oh, it's from the Predator. The Predator. Bunch of slack John faggot. Or something like that.
So war. Politics is instead of war.
It's not war distinction of politics. We are always at war. It's the assumption that you're at peace. You're ever at peace. There's no evidence we're ever at peace. We're always in competition. So competition is a compromise for warfare, and politics is an extension of warfare. Right? It's just all you're trying to do is, of course, cooperation is a substitute for warfare. Cooperation is productive. Warfare is unproductive. So it's just mutually beneficial. So we're trying to create all these systems for super predators not to kill each other and to cooperate instead.
Right, it goes to your 4 irritating questions, or five rude questions.
Yeah,
right?
I tried that on somebody the other night. Just couldn't grasp it.
Really?
This is really funny. It's like, dude, he wants this. What's a crime? Well, I mean, a crime is a thing that people enforce. And it's like, well, but what's moral? But that's I wouldn't do that because that's immoral. Well, you think it's immoral, but if you grew up in a tribe and whatever, you wouldn't think it's immoral. So the guy's trying to create this fucking fictionless nonsense out of his head, like that he believes it's in this intrinsic good. And I'm like, the whole evolution of morality is the development of us suppressing immediate gratification by the application of violence, instead to find means of cooperation by decreasing our aggression. But so it isn't like moral is a constant. Reciprocity is a constant. what's moral might vary from circumstance to circumstance, because what's moral in any circumstance is what's not irreciprocal.
Right. Right.
People,
It's very
I'm just
straightforward.
convinced. I'm convinced too many people are too stupid to talk to. Mostly guys.
Most people to the I would
Made me
say
really
that,
frustrated.
your expectations are high. Okay, so it's like it's see talk to about what, right?
It's, you know what it is they don't seek to understand, they seek to justify their right. And so many guys do that because they wrap their self-image and status in a falsehood. They malinvest in some falsehood, and then they seek to find other people to demonstrate their dominance. And when they run up against opposition, they cower.
Yes.
That's what they do. And so I'm just tired of guys who do that. It's not like I
Right.
don't understand that, you're a failure in life, and so you found some niche intellectual sort of area to pretend you have dominance. What
Oh
you're really
my.
doing is just picking on people even dumber than you are. So, yet when you come into an adult conversation, you don't seek to understand the opposite party, and you seek instead to show that you can't possibly be wrong in order to justify your malinvestments in a false status that's a substitute for your fucking failure in life to actually achieve anything.
Oh man.
Fucking exasperating.
Do you feel better? It's
I
just
feel
like
better. I feel better if I could. It's like God went through Greece with an ugly stick. If I could go through America with a smart stick and hit people with it like a fairy fucking godmother of IQ points, I'd be happy. Until that happens, I'm not going to be happy. I go off enough.
I just had the image of you with the tutu. Smacking people with your little
If
wand.
that's what it took to hit people with a smart stick, I'd fucking wear the tutu. I wouldn't care.
It's just some shit.
I'd run through the streets naked.
But see, this is it. Okay.
And all my hairy
that was
glory.
rude. Yeah, that was rude. You didn't have to do that.
It's not a visual I think of well
I
either.
didn't want to have that image in my head. The tutu I could tolerate, however.
Oh, my hairy glory.
Oh my.
The gorilla, wait, the gorilla got out of the cage again.
How did he get loose? So it's like the funny thing is the book you're making is the damn smart stick.
I know.
It's just the smart stick. It's just what's appalling is how slow it works.
Oh, I know. So fucking painful.
It's okay.
But it's like cathartic. I mean, when we publish this,
yes,
we'll both get some catharsis out of it, right?
Oh yes, I'll be very pleased.
You're right. It's like, okay, now you have no excuse for being a dumb fuck.
I know, right? Right. So there, right? Isn't it? It's so there. That's what it comes down to. Boy, I'm writing that down. That's good. So there.
But imagine this is the first course in logic you've ever taken, and it requires you to rewire
your brain. Like, oh my. It is, and it's like, well, it's bad programming up till now. This is the problem, right? The problem is that it's just accidental programming all the way up till now, right?
Yeah, they're not. It's not. I'm not blaming them for.
No, I know.
For their ignorance or whatever. What I blame them for is the youthful arrogance, is the desperation, right? They're desperate for some sort of validation. And so what they do is they piss on anything that they can't compete with, because to get validation. In other words, they're destructivists rather than seeking to understand and providing a solution. Like,
it's just behavioral investment there. It's economics, behavioral economics.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I think Martin said they've overinvested in philosophy, and it's a really bad investment.
That is quite well put.
Right. It's a really bad investment. History is a great investment.
Yes.
Economics is an even better investment. Law, at least look at law as social science.
Yes.
Is an investment. The problem is I think you have to go back to the 60s before before 1820 to read law that is social science instead of propaganda. You know?
Honestly, it's tiresome. All that was what that little outburst I had yesterday was related to my exasperation by this social constructionist nonsense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you mean that message you sent me?
Yeah, that was it. It was my reaction to this.
Well, thank you for telling me it wasn't to me, because I took it as
wasn't
what
you.
the
I
fuck did I
apologize
do?
for that. I want you to
What did I
know
do? I
something.
didn't do anything.
Wait. I like this. This is the best part. Is the response you sent back. So that was exceptionally insulting. I'm like, from you, Kurt. That is a compliment. That's a high kudo. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. It was well constructed, is what you said, and it works. Apologize that if it was seemed misdirected, which I can
Well,
understand.
you know, you sent that thing and said this morning, and you said, "Well, I meant that in general." I didn't. Well, I mean, next time, like, warn me.
I will. I apologize. I
So it's
will.
like, but I did this to you the other day, and you teased me about it. I was
Oh.
like, "But you," and you were like, "Well, it's not me." I'm like, "Well, yeah, obviously, but you know, I guess I can do the same thing."
Yeah, I understand. I accept full responsibility for that. I apologize again. That's so good, man. Like, we're making progress. We're going to get this job done, and it will take longer than you think is reasonable. Which is like, so this is the story I talked to the other Americans about, which is this: that having the fools in charge is what the energy it takes to awake the American public. That's what it takes.
Okay, so obvious failure is
It's just
necessary.
obvious
Precondition to
lies. It's
action.
like when you see your people in authority, people in positions of authority blatantly telling lies and destroying the credibility of the authority. That's what it takes. And it's so that's why I say it's going to suddenly happen. It'll appear like it just suddenly pH change, just phase change. Because that's the energy is being applied constantly all over the place, and it will, like pH will change it will denature the compound. There you have it. Hannah, where did you see this about Putin? I did not find it in my news feeds.
Came out yesterday, but it's really, I mean, like I said, it was obvious to me because I've had the same cancer. I mean, so that's what happens. You get really puffy, and it changes your mood. And you want to isolate because you want to protect yourself, and you begin thinking about your terminal death, right? You know, your death and what you want to accomplish before you leave. He's displaying all typical signs of someone with a serious illness. So it came out yesterday, but I mean, it's been floating for a while. I'm not sure I buy the Parkinson's thing because I don't see it, but I'm not that skilled. I can see the cancer behavior. So whether it's thyroid cancer or somebody said it's abdominal. So if it's what's the one in here with your immune system? Not spleen. What did Steve Jobs die of? Pancreatic.
Yep.
So it's pancreatic. He's fucking gone.
That's wicked, yeah.
So the source said he was planning on, he would retire next winter. He's going to hand over control to one of his lieutenants, who's an evil motherfucker.
That's what Armstrong has got me spooked about, the guys that are in line behind him.
Well, you know, it's an interesting way of handling the problem of failure. Is Putin can leave a hero. This guy can clean up the mess. He can blame Putin, right? Or at least, and then he has an opportunity to conduct some reforms. And his goal will be to conduct enough reforms that remove the economic sanctions. If, however, this guy was instrumental, his name is, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name because I'm tired.
Right.
he was one of the people who tried to convince Putin to do this, right? To invade. So I suspect he's going to try to maintain it instead. So, you know, we may be, the guy's the same age, he's old too, but I mean, he's relatively healthy. So we may end up with in this war for a long time, but I mean, the NATO is absolutely out in the open now with the strategy of we're going to bury Russia on this, even no matter what it takes. And since the way it works over there is the only way they can afford to lose if Putin Putin goes, that it's pretty hard to imagine they give up. And their strategy makes sense. It's just that, you know, they're going to have to, pretty soon they're going to have to declare war, which will give the government the right to open up conscription, right? And whatever. But I mean, they're going to run, they're running, they shut off oil, they shut off gas, but I'm like, they shut off gas. You know, you fucking idiots, they have to shut off gas. You don't understand. They have nowhere to put it. They can't get it out of the fucking country now. So it's backed up at the ports, right? Nobody will transfer the stuff. So they have to shut it down. They have to shut down exporting to someone, right? Well, they'll shut it down to someone that's symbolic, that undermines their whole goal is to try to push Germany, to, you know, into undermining the percent. But the truth is, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Because now we've got them tied down. So you mean as long as Ukrainians are willing to lose people at the rate they're losing them, and those people are not going to fucking give up ever. You think the Vietnamese would fight? These fucking people are just never going to give up ever. You know, we can solve. All we have to do is keep supplying them, and Russia dies on the vine. Now, is there? You know, will nuclear work? Of course, nuclear threat won't work. So, you know, they're not. Nobody's grown-ups are still in. You know, in the end, the military would just kill everybody. It would just kill. They would just make those the guys in Moscow go away if they had to, right? They kill enough of them and then put somebody else in charge and go back. But there's no way that the Russian military is going to let the Moscow, St. Petersburg, Ekaterinburg, and whatever get turned to fucking wastelands. They're just not going to let that happen. Not on their watch. I mean, they're Russian, but they're not fucking. They're not stupid. Like the Chinese. I mean, you can't fucking toss that guy to think is way out of a paper bag anymore. Fucking, and he's gone alcoholic too. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, Kurt, you've done
all right,
fine.
boss. I'm wasted. I've been wasted for about half an hour. So
yeah.
Thanks for letting me go on my couple of
rants
rants there.
I enjoyed the conversation, and I think we adjusted some that will be positively fruitful. All right, I'll send you a video link, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, boss.
Bye-bye.